Oh, hello. My name is Benjamin. I'm sorry, please give me a moment to finish this. I'm making it for a very rich man, and he's sending a servant over this afternoon to pick it up. While I'm working, Jude can... Jude! Jude! Where is that boy? Jude, wake up!
Huh? What?
It's time for us to tell them the story of Jesus.
Good. Yeah. Let's do that.
Now then, you ready to pay attention?
Yes, sir.
Good. Do you know what we'll be telling our friends about today? I'll give you a hint. It's about a miracle.
Is it about breakfast?
No. We're telling the story of Zacharias and Elizabeth.
Ah.
Jude,
Yes?
you have no idea what I'm talking about, do you?
No. Sorry.
That's fine. I'll take this one. Over the next few weeks, we're going to tell you the story of Jesus, as written in the Gospels of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. The announcement that Gabriel made was very special.
Well, first of all, both Zacharias and Elizabeth were quite old.
Zacharias was hardly any older than I am.
I rest my case.
The announcement that Gabriel made was very special.
Well, first of all, both Zacharias and Elizabeth were quite old.
Zacharias was hardly any older than I am.
I rest my case.
Does that remind you of anyone else in our history? Was there ever an old man and his wife who very badly wanted to have a child and were even promised one by God?
It sounds like Abraham and Sarah. Well, God promised them a child, even though Sarah was too old to have any children.
Very good. Does that remind you of anyone else in our history? Was there ever an old man and his wife who very badly wanted to have a child and were even promised one by God?
It sounds like Abraham and Sarah. Well, God promised them a child, even though Sarah was too old to have any children.
Very good. Anyone else?
I can remember one person who couldn't drink any wine. He couldn't cut his hair either. It was Samson.
You're exactly right. Zacharias and Elizabeth are going to have a son who is the fulfillment of God's promises, just like Isaac was the fulfillment of his promises to Abraham, and Samson was his fulfillment of his promises to rescue the children of Israel from their oppressors. Do you know why Samson and John were not allowed to drink wine?
Well, I know that Samson was a Nazirite, which is someone who is set apart by God to perform a certain task. Well, Samson's task was to kick the Philistines out of the land. But what was John's task?
Remember, it was John's job to pave the way for Jesus.
Do you think that John wasn't going to drink wine because he needed to focus on his job?
Something like that. Do you know what Jesus' first miracle was? You may be interested to know.
Probably making clay birds come to life or something like that?
Nope. Something much more significant than that. He turned water into wine. You see, Jesus was telling those around him that the job he came to do was to bring joy and gladness and a new creation.
Well, are we ever going to talk about why Jesus is so important? Or how he planned to bring this new creation that you keep talking about?
Yes. We'll get there. Ah, there we go.
So that's how Jesus spent his first night.
A pretty simple cradle for the king of creation, isn't it? You know, you can hear the story 1,000 times, and I probably have, but it never stops sounding strange when I think about it. God became a little baby and was put in a trough.
That's real love, isn't it?
That is the realest love ever. I wonder where our termite friend is.
Oh, hello.
Hello. You wouldn't believe how sweet those maple boards are. They're delicious.
Ew, that's really gross.
I think eating bread is gross. Anyhow, we were gonna talk about, what did you call it?
Christmas, the birth of Jesus.
That's right. We've talked about the story itself, about Jesus' birth and everything, and we were going to talk about the ripples it created, correct?
Ripples?
If you throw a rock into a lake, ripples spread out from the rock. It's like that with important events.
Ah, that makes sense.
Jesus was born in Bethlehem, right?
Yes.
Do you know what Bethlehem means?
A house of bread.
Yes. And later in life, the one born in Bethlehem called himself the bread of life.
Wow. More foreshadowing.
You know, I am really glad you're putting that word to good use. The Bible is full of foreshadowing. In a way, Jesus' miraculous birth was foreshadowing of his entire life to come. You know, I think that's part of why his people celebrate his birth so enthusiastically. The parables of Jesus were made-up stories to help make sense of real things.
Made up? But sweetie, you told me that all the things Jesus said were true.
How should I explain this? Yes, everything that Jesus said was true, but not everything he said was, well, real. He told fictional, that is, made-up stories to help us understand a truth about the world that we don't usually see or appreciate. Does that make sense? You're probably wondering what we're doing on this boat out here in the middle of the ocean.
I know I am.
Well, we don't know exactly where Jesus' disciples went when he sent them to preach the good news of the kingdom. Sometimes people used boats to travel in Palestine.
Well, some of them were fishermen, after all. They probably love being on the water.
Oh, yeah. And there are some Jews scattered, well, all over the world, even as far south as, well, Alexandria, Egypt. Some of the disciples might have gone there to tell them about the kingdom of heaven.
Well, it's also possible that none of them traveled in boats, isn't it?
Well, sure, it's possible, but if you have a chance to mess around with boats, why wouldn't you take it? Boating, that's the life.